You need a home, and I need a father, the little girl said. Her voice, small and steady, struck through the whirling snow like thunder in silence. Walter Hayes lay motionless by the edge of the sidewalk, his battered body half buried in slush, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Blood had dried across one cheek, his lips were cracked, and his left eye swollen shut. He looked less like a man and more like a discarded shadow, but the girl didn't flinch. She stepped closer, her boots squelching softly in the snow. She was small, maybe 7, with tight black curls tucked beneath a knitted pink cap and a coat several sizes too big. Her gloves had holes at the fingertips. Her name was Anna. Walter turned his head slowly, wincing. "You should go," he croaked. "This ain't something little girls should see." Anna sat down next to him in the snow. "You look like someone forgot about you." Walter laughed once, bitter. They didn't forget. They just stopped caring. "Why are you bleeding?" she asked gently. Walter wiped his mouth with the back of his sleeve. "Some kids, teenagers, thought it'd be funny to jump the bum. Took my blanket. One of them kicked me in the face." He paused, voice thinning. "I didn't even fight back. Guess I figured I deserved it." Anna was quiet for a long time, then said, "You don't deserve it." He glanced at her. "Why do you think that?" "Because people make mistakes. That doesn't mean they should be thrown away." Walter turned his head and looked away. His throat ached with something deeper than the bruises. "You're too young to understand, kid. Maybe. But I know what it's like to lose things." Walter blinked, snowflakes clinging to his lashes. "Like what?" "My dad," Anna said. "He died when I was 5. Car crash. My mom. She got sick last year. She tries to act strong, but I see her cry at night. She can't work much. Some days we skip dinner." She fiddled with the hem of her coat. "I think she's holding on just for me." Walter looked at her. Really looked this time. "That's a heavy thing to carry." Anna nodded slowly. "That's why I come out here. I walk around and look at people. I pretend I'm picking someone who could be our missing piece. Someone solid. Someone who could help keep us together." Walter tried to swallow. The pain in his throat wasn't physical. "And you picked me?" he rasped. She reached into her coat and pulled out a crumpled napkin. "This was my dessert. A cinnamon roll. I saved it from school lunch. You need it more." He hesitated, then took it from her shaking hands. The sweetness hit his tongue like sunlight through broken clouds. Anna watched him chew, her dark eyes calm. "We live in that brown building with the boarded windows. It's not much, just one room, but it's warm. My mom sleeps on the floor so I can have the mattress. She won't mind if you stay tonight." Walter's eyes glistened. "You don't even know me. I know enough. You didn't push me away, and you cried. Grown-ups who cry aren't dangerous." He chuckled softly, the sound breaking in his chest. "You got a strange way of choosing people. Better than waiting for someone perfect." She shrugged. "Perfect people don't usually stop." She stood up and offered her gloved hand. Walter stared at it, then reached up with his bruised one. She pulled him up with more strength than her frame suggested. "You sure your mom won't think I'm trouble?" "She already thinks trouble is better than being alone," Anna said. "And you're better than trouble." They walked together, her hand wrapped tight around his. Walter limped slowly, but each step felt more possible than the last. Inside the one-room apartment, Anna helped him onto the thin mattress. A small heater hummed in the corner. On the wall was a drawing she'd made stick figures holding hands beneath a sky full of stars. "That's me, Mom, and someone we haven't found yet," she whispered. Walter stared at it, and the weight in his chest shifted. "Maybe," he said quietly, "you just did. If you feel a connection with the character, give this video a like, and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching too." Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. The warmth inside the apartment hit Walter like a wave, gentle, startling, and almost painful. After days in the cold, the stale but heated air wrapped around him like a forgotten embrace. He blinked slowly, adjusting to the dim yellow light of the single lamp flickering in the corner. The room was small, no more than a repurposed utility closet, really, but it pulsed with life. Piles of folded clothes sat on cracked shelves. A few plastic toys rested in a shoebox beside the mattress. A family photo, faded and wrinkled, was taped to the wall. Anna moved with purpose. She took off her coat and scarf, then turned to Walter. "You can lie down if you want. Just for a bit. My mom's not back yet." Walter nodded and eased himself down onto the mattress, every joint creaking in protest. He hadn't felt anything this soft in weeks, maybe months. He let out a deep breath, one that seemed to escape from somewhere buried beneath his ribs. Anna sat cross-legged beside him. "You really used to wear suits?" Walter gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, custom made. Italian wool. Had a whole closet full of them." "What happened?" she asked, her voice not pressing, just curious. Like a child asking why the moon changes shape. He stared at the ceiling. "I let someone down. Someone real important. And after that, I stopped wanting to be seen." Anna was quiet for a while. "Did they forgive you?" "No," Walter said after a pause. "I didn't forgive myself either." Anna tilted her head. "You should, if you were sorry." He looked at her. "What makes you so sure I am?" She shrugged. "You cried." A lump rose in his throat again, but he swallowed it back. "You're smart, kid. Too smart for this world." She smiled. "That's what my teacher used to say, before we had to stop going to school." Walter propped himself up slightly. "What happened?" "My mom got too sick to work. We couldn't afford the bus. Couldn't afford much of anything." She looked down at her hands. "Some days we go to church for food. Some days we don't eat, but we always find a way." Walter looked around. There were no Christmas lights. No fancy gadgets. No decorations. But there was a handmade paper chain strung across the wall, and the lingering scent of cinnamon and something floral, maybe soap. It wasn't luxury, but it was survival, stitched together with pride. "She's strong, your mom," he said. Anna nodded. "Stronger than anyone." The sound of a key scraping the lock made them both turn. The door creaked open, and a thin woman stepped in, wearing 2 scarves and a look of exhausted confusion. She froze when she saw Walter. "Anna?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Who is this?" Anna jumped up and ran over. "Mom, this is Mr. Walter. He was hurt. I found him in the snow. He didn't have anyone." Walter slowly stood up, wobbling a little. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. Your daughter, she saved me." Anna's mother stared at him, uncertain, one hand still gripping the doorknob. Her face was pale, her skin drawn, and there was a tightness in her shoulders that never seemed to relax. "I should go," Walter said softly. "No," Anna said quickly. "Please, Mom. He doesn't have anywhere to go. And I already gave him my cinnamon roll." "No." Anna's mom blinked, then let out a long sigh. "Do you need medical attention?" "I'll be fine," Walter said. "Just bruised pride and some broken ribs." She walked past him to put down her bag and groceries, just a carton of milk and a loaf of bread. Walter noticed her wince as she moved. She was hiding pain, but she did it with practiced grace. "Dinner's late," she murmured, pulling off her scarf. "I'll heat the soup." Anna chirped. Going to the hot plate in the corner, Walter sat back down, unsure of what to do with himself. He felt out of place, like a ghost someone accidentally invited into their home. As the soup warmed, Anna talked. About her favorite cartoons. About how the neighbor downstairs always smelled like fish. About how she once found a penny with a hole in it and thought it was lucky. Walter listened. So did her mother, silently sipping her tea and watching him from the corner of her eye. "You from Chicago?" she finally asked. "Born and raised," he said. "Used to live 2 blocks from the lake. Then the business went under. Then, everything else did too." She nodded, understanding more than she let on. "Name's Celia." Walter, he said again gently. Dinner was 3 chipped bowls of tomato soup, diluted but warm. They ate in silence at first. And then, slowly, stories trickled out. Walter told them about his old Labrador, how he used to sneak him into meetings when he was just a pup. Celia chuckled at that. When the meal was done, Anna yawned and curled into her blanket. Walter helped Celia wash the bowls. She didn't ask many questions, but she didn't send him back into the snow either. Later that night, Walter lay on a thin quilt on the floor while Anna slept soundly beside her mother. Outside, the wind howled again, but it couldn't get in here. Not tonight. And for the first time in years, Walter Hayes wasn't invisible. The sun rose slow and pale through the frost-bitten skyline of Chicago, casting a dim orange hue through the cracked window of Celia's apartment. The city outside stirred awake with sirens, honking horns, and the distant rhythm of subway tracks. But inside the tiny one-room unit, warmth lingered, not just from the heater humming near the wall, but from the quiet breathing of 3 souls who had, against all odds, found a kind of peace during the night. Walter was the first to wake. He lay still for a while, listening. Anna was curled into her mother's side on the mattress, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Celia's arm wrapped around her, protective even in sleep. Walter shifted carefully on the floor, his ribs still sore, but not as sharp as they had been yesterday. For the first time in a long time, he'd slept without fear. No footsteps chasing him, no bitter wind clawing at his face, just the soft hum of safety. He stood slowly, gripping the side of the wall for balance. His coat still smelled faintly of blood and snow, so he shrugged it off and folded it neatly at the foot of the mattress. In the corner, a mirror hung crookedly on a nail. He caught a glimpse of himself, bruised, grizzled, older than he remembered. He barely recognized the man staring back. A soft sound behind him. "Morning," Celia said, sitting up groggily. Her voice was husky from sleep, but not unkind. "Didn't mean to wake you," Walter replied. "Just thought I'd let you sleep longer." She stretched, careful not to disturb Anna. "You're still here." Walter looked down. "I can leave if you want. I just didn't want to disappear without saying thank you." Celia shook her head slowly. "I'm glad you stayed." There was an awkward beat of silence between them. "I could run to the pantry," Walter offered. "Maybe find some breakfast. Bread or canned something, if you point me where to go." Celia looked at him for a moment, surprised. Then she nodded toward the door. "There's a mission on Halstead, 3 blocks over. They open at 9. Just show them you're not drunk, and they'll give you something." Walter pulled his coat back on. "Anything you or Anna need?" Celia hesitated. "Milk, if they've got it. But don't worry about us." "I will anyway," he said. As he stepped out into the cold, the street greeted him like an old enemy. But this time, he walked with a purpose. His limp was still there, but his shoulders stood a little straighter. At the mission, he waited in line with 10 others, each with their own stories etched into their eyes. When it was his turn, he received a small bag, 2 cans of soup, a sleeve of crackers, and, to his surprise, a small carton of milk. He grinned. "Would you look at that?" On his way back, he noticed a job board nailed to a telephone pole. Most of it was torn, smeared with graffiti and weather stains. But one note remained readable. "Help needed. Maintenance and odd jobs. Room included. Inquire at 18th and Madison." He stared at it for a long time, then pulled it down and slipped it into his coat. When he returned, Anna was awake, perched on the windowsill like a cat. "You came back," she said with a grin. "Of course I did," he replied. "Didn't I say I would?" "People say a lot of things," she muttered. He placed the bag on the counter. "But I brought milk. That's gotta count for something." Anna peeked inside. "You're a hero." Celia was folding clothes on the floor, watching them with something unreadable in her gaze. She didn't speak until Walter sat down. "You weren't lying," she said softly. "About what?" "Having been someone else. You walk like a man who used to own the ground he steps on." Walter chuckled. "That man's gone. Maybe. But maybe parts of him are still useful." They ate lunch together, soup and crackers warmed on the hot plate. Anna told stories about her imaginary cat named Waffles and how she thought pigeons were just spies pretending to be birds. Walter laughed, a deep, weathered sound that surprised even him. But just as the warmth settled in, a knock came at the door. 3 sharp taps. Celia stiffened. Walter moved toward the door instinctively. When he opened it, a woman in a gray coat and clipboard stood there. "Good afternoon. I'm with Social Services. We received a report about a minor in this building, without proper supervision." Celia stood quickly, pulling Anna behind her. "I'm her mother." The woman gave a polite but firm nod. "And who is he?" Walter opened his mouth, but Celia cut in. "A friend. He's not living here, just visiting." The social worker glanced around the tiny space. "Is there a reason your child hasn't been in school this week?" "I was sick," Celia said quietly. "She stayed to take care of me." "And do you have proof of residence? Any employment documents?" Walter saw the color drain from Celia's face. "We're between jobs right now," she said. "But we're doing fine." "Really?" The woman jotted something on her clipboard. "I'll need to follow up. Possibly a home visit from CPS." When she left, the door clicked shut behind her like a warning bell. Celia dropped onto the mattress, eyes wide, heart racing. Walter sat beside her. "I'm sorry," he said. "This is because of me." "No," she replied firmly. "This is the system. It doesn't care that she's fed or warm or loved. It just sees broken things to fix." Anna came over and took her mother's hand. "We'll be okay. We got Mr. Walter now." Celia met his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't look like she was bracing for goodbye. Walter sat by the cracked window that evening, watching as the city slipped into darkness again. Street lamps flickered to life, casting dull golden halos over icy sidewalks. Inside, the silence in the small apartment was different now, tight, uncertain. Celia hadn't spoken much since the woman from Social Services left. She was moving around the space in short bursts, folding, organizing, cleaning what was already clean. It was the kind of nervous energy that only came when something bigger was looming and there was nothing you could do to stop it. Anna, as always, tried to brighten the mood. She had built a castle out of soup cans in the corner and was narrating an elaborate fairy tale in which knights rode city buses and dragons were just grumpy old men needing hugs. But Walter could feel the pressure. The air was heavy with it. He stood and walked toward Celia, who was scrubbing a mug for the 3rd time. "I saw a job posting earlier," he said softly. "Maintenance and odd jobs, place on 18th and Madison. They offer room and board." She glanced up, clearly surprised. "You're thinking of taking it?" He nodded. "If they'll have me." Celia put the mug down, wiping her hands. "That could be good, Walter. Real good. I thought maybe," he hesitated. "Maybe once I get the job, you and Anna could stay with me. Safer. Cleaner. A real address." Her eyes searched his face for a long time. Then she shook her head. "That's kind. But CPS would see it as me giving my child to a stranger with no legal ties. It could make things worse." Walter's shoulders dropped slightly. "Then maybe I just go, start the work, and send anything I can back your way. I won't take charity." "It's not charity," he said, echoing Anna's words from days earlier. "It's kindness. There's a difference." She smiled faintly at that, then nodded. "All right. If you feel strong enough, do it. But be careful, Walter. This city doesn't always forgive." He left early the next morning, walking across half-frozen sidewalks as the sun crept over brick buildings. The address led him to a former church, now converted into a shelter that housed a maintenance office in the basement. A man named Terrence, bald and built like a refrigerator, greeted him with a skeptical stare. "You know plumbing?" Terrence asked. "I know how to make things stop leaking." "Electric? I've rewired a coffee shop mid-lunch rush." Terrence raised an eyebrow. "You drink?" "Not in 15 years. He waited, hands stuffed into his coat pockets. Terrence gave a slow nod. "All right. You get 2 weeks trial. Room upstairs. You fix what breaks, keep the snow off the stoop, and don't cause trouble." Walter exhaled. "Deal." He moved into a small room above the main floor, with a narrow bed and a lamp missing its shade. but it was warm, and it was his. That night, he used the shelter's old landline and called the corner store near Celia's building. He asked them to deliver milk, fruit, and 2 cans of soup to apartment 4B. No note, no explanation. Back in the room, Walter stared at the ceiling. The kind of silence only found in solitude pressing in around him. But it wasn't empty anymore. He had a reason to stay clean. A reason to stay standing. A week passed. He repaired leaky sinks, replaced broken tiles, shoveled snow like a man possessed. He ate his meals quietly, took notes on every maintenance request. He was rebuilding something, not just a reputation, but a rhythm. One night, after tightening the last bolt under a water heater, he heard a knock at the back door. When he opened it, Anna stood there, bundled in a coat twice her size, cheeks pink from the cold. "I missed you," she said. Walter dropped the wrench and stepped outside. "Anna? What? How did you find me?" "Mom said it was okay. She wanted to come, but her legs were too sore today. So I promised to go alone and come right back." "Oh." He crouched down, brushing snow from her shoulders. "Does she know you're here safe?" Anna nodded. "I told the corner guy to call her when I got here." Walter looked at her, so small and fierce in the snow. "You're braver than most people I know." "I brought something," she said, digging into her coat. She pulled out a folded napkin, inside it a chocolate chip cookie. "I saved it from lunch," she said. "To share with you. Half and half." They sat on the cold stoop, legs dangling, breaking the cookie between them. Walter took a bite and sighed. "Best thing I've tasted all day." "You look better," Anna said, "not so bruised." "I feel better," he said. "You gave me something, remember?" "What?" "A reason to come back." She leaned her head on his arm. "You think they'll take me from Mom?" Walter's chest tightened. "They might try. But they won't win. Not if I can help it." Anna smiled. "You already are helping." "No." She handed him a folded piece of paper, her drawing. This time, it showed her, Celia, and Walter standing together beneath a roof labeled Home. He swallowed hard. She stood and dusted off her pants. "Time to go. Mom's waiting." Walter walked her to the end of the block, watched her disappear into the night. Then he turned and looked up at the building he now called his own. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was rebuilding. And this time, he wasn't doing it alone. Walter hadn't written his name on a form in nearly 3 years. But there it was, now printed neatly in black ink on the employment record that Terrence handed him to complete. "Make it official," Terrence said, handing over a pen. Walter stared at the paper. His name looked foreign. Too clean. Like it belonged to someone else. Walter James Hayes. Once, that name opened doors in high-rises, earned nods in boardrooms. Now it was inked on a form that would guarantee him a cot, a hot meal, and a mop bucket with his name taped to it. He signed it. "You're not just a ghost anymore," Terrence grunted, glancing at the signature. "That's your life on paper now. Don't screw it up." Walter nodded. Not planning to. Later that day, he fixed a rusted radiator and helped restock the pantry shelves. His hands had begun to find rhythm again, the muscle memory of responsibility. Every bolt he tightened felt like reclaiming a little piece of himself. He didn't mind the aching knees or the grease under his nails. It was proof that he was building something real. That evening, he called Celia from the shelter phone. "Hey," she answered quietly. The sound of a television playing in the background faded as she turned it down. "Just checking in," he said. "Got officially signed on today." "That's great, Walter," she said, her voice softening. "How's Anna?" "She's drawing again. Said she wants to make a comic book about a homeless hero with super tools." "You're the main character," Walter chuckled. "She's got an imagination. She's got faith," Celia said. "I think she believes in you more than anyone." "That makes 2 of us then," he said gently. "Because I believe in her." They sat in silence on the line for a beat. "Celia, about the CPS visit," Walter began. "I've been thinking. Maybe there's something we can do." "No." "What do you mean?" "There's this guy I used to know. A lawyer. Did a lot of pro bono work for housing cases. I think I can find him. Maybe he can help us get you and Anna on more solid footing. Some kind of legal protection." There was hesitation on the other end. "You'd go that far for us? You already saved my life," he said. "I think it's time I try to return the favor." The next morning, Walter headed across town. He hadn't been to the financial district in years. The building still stood tall and glossy, casting long shadows over the sidewalks. He felt small again. Exposed. Like someone would spot him and drag him back into his past. He found the office smaller than it used to be, but the brass nameplate was still there, J. Mendel and Associates. He walked in, wearing his best shirt clean, if frayed, and asked the receptionist if he could speak to Jordan Mendel. The woman blinked at him. "Do you have an appointment? Number? But tell him Walter Hayes is here, from Avalon Holdings." She raised an eyebrow, but made the call. 10 minutes later, a man emerged balding, with tired eyes. But when he saw Walter, his mouth dropped open. "Walter? Jesus. Is that really you?" "In the flesh," Walter said. A little rougher than before. They shook hands, and Jordan pulled him into his office. "What happened, man?" Jordan asked, genuinely shaken. "Life," Walter said. "The short version, I lost everything. The long version? I gave up on fixing it. Until recently." Jordan listened as Walter told him about Anna, about Celia, about the visit from CPS. "I don't have money," Walter finished. "But I've got time. I've got sweat. I've got the will to make something right." Jordan rubbed his chin. "It's a long shot, but we might be able to file for emergency guardianship support, maybe even argue for a formal mentorship arrangement. I can make some calls." Walter exhaled. "Thank you. I can't promise anything," Jordan warned, "but you're not alone anymore." That night, Walter returned to the shelter with a stack of papers Jordan had prepared. He didn't sleep much. He kept thinking about Anna's drawing, the roof labeled, "Home." The next day, he visited Celia's apartment with the documents. She sat at the table, flipping through them slowly. "You're serious about this?" she asked. "I don't want anything from you," Walter said, "but I know what it's like to be invisible, and I don't want that for her. Or for you." Celia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just let me try," Walter said. "That's enough." Later, Anna climbed into his lap and whispered, "If you get to be my dad, do I get your last name?" Walter's voice caught in his throat. "If you want it." She grinned. "Anna Hayes. Sounds strong." He looked at Celia, and she smiled. "It does." Chicago's winter showed no mercy that week. The streets were caked in layers of gray snow, and the wind clawed at windows like it was trying to get inside. But in apartment 4B, a flicker of warmth fought against the cold. A space heater hummed in the corner, casting a dull orange glow over the small room. Anna was sprawled on the mattress, crayons in hand, sketching a new drawing. This one showed 3 figures standing in front of a tall building with the words, "Safe Place," scribbled above it. Walter sat across from her, double-checking the paperwork Jordan had helped prepare. Guardianship petitions, letters of character reference, even a notarized affidavit from the shelter where he worked. His hand trembled slightly as he read the final page. Celia sat nearby, watching them both with a quiet intensity. Her cough had returned a dry, persistent rasp that sounded worse in the cold. But she didn't complain. She never did. "You all right?" Walter asked, folding the forms. "I've been worse," she answered, wiping her nose with a tissue. "But it's getting harder to fake it around Anna." "She knows," Walter said gently. Celia glanced at her daughter. "Yeah. She always knows." There was a knock at the door. Anna jumped up and ran to open it. A delivery man stood in the hallway, holding a padded envelope. "For a Mr. Walter Hayes?" he asked. "That's me," Walter replied, stepping forward. He signed, then took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a neatly folded letter with the seal of the Department of Children and Family Services. He read the first few lines, and his stomach dropped. "What is it?" Celia asked, her voice tense. Walter handed her the letter silently. She read quickly, her eyes widening. "They've moved up the investigation," she whispered. "They're sending someone tomorrow." Walter rubbed the back of his neck. "They're pushing for immediate placement evaluation. That means they think this place," he gestured around the room, "isn't suitable." Celia stood up, pacing. They'll say it's too small, that I'm too sick, that Anna's not getting the care she needs. They'll try to take her, Walter said flatly. Anna looked between them, her drawing forgotten. Am I going somewhere? Celia rushed to her, dropping to her knees. No, baby, you're not going anywhere. Walter crouched beside them. Listen to me, Anna. This doesn't change anything. We're going to fight for you. Together. Anna nodded, but her lip quivered. Do I have to talk to them? Maybe, Walter said. But just tell the truth. Tell them what you feel. That's all. Later that night, after Anna was asleep, Walter sat with Celia at the table. We need a plan, he said. I don't have money for a lawyer, she replied. And even with your friend's help, we're still up against the state. I'm not giving up, he said. I've made mistakes. Plenty. But I'm not going to let bureaucracy take her away just because we don't fit into their neat little boxes. Celia met his eyes. Then we do this together. The next morning came fast and gray. Clouds hung low, threatening snow again. At exactly 9:30, a knock echoed at the door. Walter opened it. A woman in a tailored navy coat stood there, holding a clipboard. Her expression was unreadable, professional. Behind her stood a younger man, maybe an assistant, holding a briefcase. Mr. Hayes? Miss Brooks? I'm Miss Albright from DCFS. We're here to conduct an assessment of the living situation. Come in, Walter said, stepping aside. They entered, glancing around the cramped space. The assistant made quiet notes while Miss Albright surveyed the room. Her gaze landed on the mattress, the modest kitchen setup, the portable heater. Where does the child sleep? She asked. With me, Celia said. We share the mattress. Do you work? I was working as a cleaner, Celia said. But I got sick. I'm getting better. And Mr. Hayes? I'm employed at a community shelter. Walter answered. I have stable housing and income. I've filed paperwork to be considered for legal guardianship assistance. Miss Albright raised an eyebrow. You're not related by blood? No, he said. But family is more than biology. Is the child present? She's in the other room, Celia said. We told her someone might come. Miss Albright nodded. I'd like to speak with her. Alone. Walter and Celia exchanged a glance, then nodded. Anna entered, holding her drawing, and sat across from Miss Albright. The woman softened slightly. Hi, Anna. Can I ask you a few questions? Anna nodded. Do you like living here? Anna nodded again. It's warm. Mom makes soup with crackers. And Mr. Walter tells stories. Do you feel safe here? Anna didn't hesitate. Yes. Would you feel safe if you had to go stay somewhere else? Anna frowned. Not if my mom wasn't there. Miss Albright smiled gently. Thank you, sweetheart. After the interview, Miss Albright and her assistant stood to leave. We'll review everything, she said. You'll receive a written notice within 5 business days. Oh. When the door closed behind them, Celia sank into the chair. That's it, she whispered. Walter looked at Anna, who had returned to her drawing. Not yet, he said. This is only the first storm, but in his chest, a quiet hope had started to flicker. Because Anna had spoken her truth. And sometimes, that was the strongest weapon of all. 5 days passed, each one longer than the last. Walter spent his mornings at the shelter, tightening leaky faucets, replacing cracked tiles, and keeping himself so busy he wouldn't count the hours. Every break, he found himself watching the shelter phone, waiting for a call that never came. Every evening, he walked back to Celia's apartment, bearing groceries, soup, cough, medicine, whatever little comforts he could afford. Celia tried to stay calm, but the tension crept into her bones. She cleaned more, rearranged shelves, rewrote lists of what they'd do if the worst happened. Her cough hadn't gone away, and her sleep was light and broken. But she never said a word of fear in front of Anna. Anna, in contrast, lived on a different rhythm. She continued drawing, crafting little stories about heroes who saved the day with hammers, brooms, and buckets. She'd ask questions like, do you think people at City Hall ever need hugs? And, if a person loses their house, do their dreams still have an address? Walter never knew how to answer. So he'd just say, yes, and smile like he believed it. On the 6th day, around noon, The letter came. Walter found it taped to the door of the shelter's front desk, a plain white envelope, addressed in neat government print. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he held it in his hand like it was a bird with a broken wing, too fragile to squeeze, too dangerous to drop. Terrence noticed. "You all right?" Walter nodded. "Yeah. Just..." One of those moments. Terrence didn't press. He just gave Walter a firm pat on the shoulder and said, "Good luck, Hayes." Walter left early and walked the 10 blocks to Celia's place in silence. The snow had stopped, and the sky was a pale gray, the kind that hovered between storm and calm. When he knocked, Anna opened the door, beaming. "Did you bring soup?" Walter held up the letter. "Not today." Celia stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "That it?" He nodded. They sat around the small table, the heater rattling faintly in the corner. Walter placed the envelope between them. No one moved for a moment. "I'll read it," Celia finally said. She opened the letter slowly, unfolding the single page inside. Her eyes scanned the lines, moving left to right, slower, then faster. Then she stopped. Walter watched her face. It was unreadable. Anna leaned forward, whispering, "Mom?" Celia lowered the paper. "They're not removing her," she said, voice tight. Walter exhaled, leaning back against the chair. "They noted the conditions are modest," she continued, "but stable. They approved a 6-month observation period under current guardianship, with review." Walter rubbed his face, overwhelmed. "That means we get to stay together," Celia said, "but they'll be watching. One slip, and they'll come again." Anna didn't seem to care about the fine print. She jumped up and hugged her mom tight. "We did it!" she cried. "We really did it." Walter smiled. "Number, you did it." Celia looked at him, her eyes softer than they had been in weeks. "We all did." That night, they celebrated with soup and toast. Walter brought over an old record player he'd found in the shelter's attic. Celia laughed when he pulled it out, the dust still clinging to the edges. "I didn't know you were sentimental," she teased. "I'm just old," he replied. They played scratchy jazz tunes while Anna danced barefoot on the carpet, spinning in circles and shouting, "We're still a team." Celia poured 2 small cups of leftover apple juice and handed one to Walter. "To small victories," she said. He raised his cup. "To starting over." Later, after Anna fell asleep curled against the mattress, Celia and Walter sat in the quiet. "I keep thinking about that day you showed up," she said, frozen, bleeding, "and now you're here." Walter nodded. "I didn't think I'd survive that night." "You didn't just survive," she said. "You gave us a chance." Walter looked down. "I was nobody. You're somebody now," she said softly. "To me, to her." He didn't respond right away. "I want to do more," he said finally, "not just be allowed to stay. I want to be the reason this family doesn't break." "You already are," Celia whispered. And in that moment, the silence between them was not empty, but full of trust, of gratitude, of something growing slowly and deeply beneath the surface. Winter wasn't over, but neither were they. The day after the letter, the sky over Chicago cracked open and dropped a fresh coat of snow, thick and blinding white. Walter stood on the rooftop of the shelter early that morning, clearing off ice from a heating vent with a broken broomstick. His breath rose in white puffs, and the cold bit through his gloves, but he felt something he hadn't in a long time. Direction. Terrence found him up there around 8. "Busy saving the world one vent at a time?" Terrence called. Walter looked up and grinned. "Someone's got to keep the heat on." Terrence nodded and crossed his arms. "Got a call this morning. Some guy asking for you by name. Said he was looking for Walter Hayes, the one that used to own the sky. That mean anything?" Walter stiffened. That was a phrase from another life, from when he wore $1,000 suits and signed contracts from the 50th floor. "Did he leave a name?" "Marcus Sloan," Terrence said. Sounded urgent. Walter looked out over the city. Sloan had been his partner once. They'd built a real estate empire together until the fall. Marcus had stayed afloat, maybe even climbed higher. Walter hadn't heard his name in years. "You gonna call him back?" Terrence asked. "I don't know." Terrence shrugged. "Up to you. Just don't forget where you are now." That evening, curiosity won. Walter used the office phone, heart thudding as he dialed the number Terrence had scribbled on a post-it. On the third ring, a familiar voice answered. "Hayes, you're alive." Walter leaned against the wall. "Guess so." Listen, Marcus said, voice tight. "I heard what you've been doing. The shelter, the kid, the woman. You've made a hell of a story for yourself." Walter frowned. "This isn't a story, Marcus. Everything's a story, Walt. And right now, I've got investors whispering about redemption arcs. About legacy." Walter didn't like where this was going. "I'm launching a new project," Marcus continued. "Urban renewal. We're taking abandoned housing, repurposing them into sustainable living centers. You have experience. You used to be the best." "I was also the guy who blew everything up," Walter said. "Exactly. Come back from that? People eat it up. You'd be the face of the program." Walter gripped the phone tighter. "And what do you want in return?" "Just your name. Your face. You show up, give speeches. The press eats it up, and we make real change." There was a pause. "And I'll make sure that paperwork you filed for that girl, it moves through faster, cleaner." Walter's stomach turned. "So that's what this is. It's business, Walt. The kind you use to run circles around." Walter stared at the wall. "Let me think. Don't take too long. These windows don't stay open forever." That night, he told Celia everything. She sat quietly, listening, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea. "He wants to use you," she said finally. "I know, but he's offering something real." "I know that too." Celia looked at him. "What do you want, Walter?" "Really?" Walter ran a hand through his hair. "I want to protect you both. I want to fix what I broke, even if I can't ever fully pay for it." "Then don't sell your soul to do it," she said gently. Anna, who had been quietly coloring in the corner, looked up. "Is Mr. Marcus a bad guy?" Walter smiled sadly. "He's not evil. Just slippery." Anna wrinkled her nose. "Like a lizard?" "Exactly." She came over and sat beside him. "You don't need him. You already saved us." Walter looked at Celia, then down at the girl beside him. He thought of the cold nights on the street. The blood dried on his face, the taste of crackers and soup, the weight of shame that had crushed him for years. And how it all shifted the moment Anna said, "You need a home. And I need a daddy." "No deal," he whispered. "What?" Celia asked. "I'm not going back to who I was, not even for the promise of safety. If we're going to build something, it's going to be real." Celia exhaled, her shoulders dropping with relief. "Then we'll keep building." Walter called Marcus the next day and gave his answer. Marcus didn't argue, just sighed. "Suit yourself, Hayes. But don't expect many second chances." Walter hung up and didn't feel a single ounce of regret. That same afternoon, the shelter's boiler cracked. Pipes leaked. Power blinked out across half the building. Walter worked into the night, elbow deep in rust and freezing water, patching the system back together with borrowed tools and instinct. Terrence showed up with hot coffee and a grim nod of approval. "You didn't take his deal, did you?" Walter shook his head. "I'm already working for someone else." Terrence smirked. "That little girl's got more pull than $1 million investor. She's got more heart," Walter said. By midnight, the heat was back on. The lights flickered steady. Walter returned to his tiny room, soaked and exhausted, but smiling. He had said no to power, to comfort, to the easy road, and it felt damn good. Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside, the ground beneath him felt solid for the first time in years. By the end of February, the wind in Chicago lost its vicious bite, though snow still clung to the gutters like stubborn memories. Walter stood outside the shelter, hammer in hand, staring up at the plywood sign above the door. The paint had long faded. Only ghost letters remained from a church that hadn't seen a sermon in decades. It wasn't much to look at, but this place had saved lives, his among them. He glanced down at the heavy plank resting against the wall, a new sign. Plain white background, bold navy letters. Anna had drawn the design herself, clean block print, with a small sun peeking out behind the word hope. The official name: Hope Haven Community Center. Terrence stepped out with 2 mugs of coffee, handing one to Walter. "We ready to put it up?" Walter nodded. "Let's give this place its real name." Together, they hoisted the board into place, Terrence grumbling about ladder angles, while Walter held it steady. The nails went in easy. When they stepped back, the sun caught the fresh paint just right. "It looks honest," Terrence said. "It looks like a new start," Walter replied. Later that afternoon, Anna and Celia arrived. Anna jumped out of the cab and ran straight to the sign, tilting her head to read it. "We're on the map now," she shouted. "Hope Haven." Celia followed more slowly, coughing into her sleeve. She was thinner than Walter remembered, shadows beneath her eyes, wrists wrapped tight in sleeves too big. The last round of medicine hadn't gone far enough. The next one would require a prescription and a clinic she hadn't dared walk into since the bills started piling up. Walter helped her into the building, arm beneath hers. "You need to let me help." "I'm fine," she whispered. "Don't worry, Anna. She already knows," he said gently. "She's just pretending not to." That night, they sat in the common room. Walter had cooked spaghetti, and Anna was piling Parmesan onto hers like snow. Around them, other shelter guests filtered in and out, drawn by the warmth and the smell of real food. A woman named Carla, recently out of a rehab program, brought over a radio and played Motown classics. Terrence nodded along to "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," while Anna danced in her socks, dragging Walter into a clumsy waltz. Celia laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. After dinner, Anna pulled Walter aside and pointed to a bulletin board in the hallway. "I want to put up our picture," she said, "so people know this is home." Walter helped her pin a sketch, a new one. This time, it showed a brick building under a sunrise. 3 stick figures stood out front, one tall, one thin with a cane, and one small with wild curls and big shoes. Above the drawing, she wrote, "Family lives here." Walter swallowed hard. "You're quite the artist." "I just draw what's real," she said. Even when it's invisible. The next day brought more guests to Hope Haven. Walter helped screen new arrivals, showing them their cots, handing out supplies. One of them was a teenage boy named Elijah, recently kicked out by his father after coming out. He carried nothing but a backpack and a shoebox filled with letters. "He didn't want me anymore," Elijah said quietly. Walter put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Well, we do. You're safe here." Later, Walter told Terrence, "We need a room just for the kids. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere that feels normal." Terrence grunted. "We've got a mop closet." Walter smiled. "Then we start with that." Within days, they transformed the space. Anna painted the walls with bright colors, while Carla donated a bookshelf. Celia helped sew cushions for the floor. They called it the nest. At the end of the week, a small plaque went up beside the door. "The nest, built by many hands, kept by big hearts." The following Monday, Jordan Mendel visited. He walked the hallways slowly, nodding at the changes. He had helped expedite Celia's medical support and was now helping Walter establish Hope Haven as a formal nonprofit. "You've built something," Jordan said, hands in pockets. "Not just shelter structure." Walter looked around. "It's not just mine. But you're the spine," Jordan replied, "and I think it's time we made that official." He pulled out a certificate, already framed. It bore the Hope Haven seal and read, "In recognition of Walter J. Hayes, founder and guardian." Walter stared at it. "I don't need recognition," Jordan chuckled. "It's not for you. It's for them, so they know who stood up when everyone else walked away." Celia hung the plaque later that day. Anna clapped as it went up, then stood beside it with her arms crossed. "Now no one can forget," she said proudly. As the day ended, Walter walked outside and watched the sunset spread gold over the rooftops. The city still carried its scars just like him. But something had changed. He no longer feared being seen. He no longer ran from his name. And in a small corner of a big city, his past was no longer his prison. It was the foundation of something better, something lasting. Hope didn't just live here now. It had a door, a sign, and a name on the wall. Spring whispered its arrival into Chicago with cautious warmth. Patches of green peeked through the snow. and the air held a promise of change. At Hope Haven, sunlight filtered through newly cleaned windows, casting soft light across the main hall. There was laughter again, the kind that lingered. It felt like hope had roots now, but even in the bloom of renewal, shadows lingered. One morning, as Walter was fixing a broken cabinet in the pantry, Terrence walked in holding a clipboard with a frown that didn't quite fit the weather. "We've got a scheduled site visit," he said. "Tomorrow, city inspectors, and someone from DCFS again." Walter wiped sweat from his brow. "DCFS? Why again so soon?" "Routine, supposedly." Follow-up from Anna's case. "They're reevaluating after the 6-month provisional decision." "You know the drill." Walter's stomach turned. "We're stable. She's safe. They've seen that." "Bureaucracy doesn't see people," Terrence said. "Just boxes to check." Walter nodded slowly. "Then we make sure every box is checked." That evening, he told Celia, she was sitting on the edge of her bed, bundled in 2 sweaters, coughing quietly. Her medication had helped, but the illness was like a tenant that refused to leave. "They're coming again," he said. "Tomorrow." Celia closed her eyes. "We knew this would happen. We've done everything we could." "We're not losing her," Walter said, his voice firm. "Not when we've come this far." Anna, sitting nearby with a book in her lap, looked up. "They want to take me away again?" Walter knelt beside her. They just want to see how we're doing. That everything's okay." Anna tilted her head. "But they already know that." "Sometimes people need to be reminded," Celia said gently. The next morning was a whirlwind of preparation. Walter and Terrence double-checked every light fixture, every corner of the shelter. Carla led a group cleaning effort. Elijah organized the pantry. Anna helped Celia tidy their apartment, folding blankets with careful precision. By 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Walter opened the door to find a woman in a charcoal blazer, with a man beside her holding a leather folder. Behind them was someone unexpected, a tall, severe-looking woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that scanned the lobby like a hawk. She introduced herself as Miss Darnell, senior administrator from DCFS. "I'm here to oversee the final evaluation," she said. Walter offered his hand. She ignored it and walked inside. The tour was tense. Miss Darnell asked pointed questions, her tone clipped. She took notes, frowned often, and spoke very little. When they reached Anna and Celia's space, she paused. "This is better than I expected," she admitted, still modest. "It's more than a roof," Celia said, standing straighter. "It's peace." Miss Darnell turned to Anna. "Do you like it here?" Anna looked at her directly. "I love it. This is where my family is." "And Mr. Hayes," Miss Darnell continued. "You're still employed here?" "Yes," Walter answered. "I manage maintenance, programs, and logistics. And I'm filing to establish legal guardianship through a structured mentorship agreement with legal counsel." Miss Darnell didn't nod or frown. She just wrote it down. Back in the main hall, she surveyed the residents quietly. Some smiled nervously, others ignored her completely. Elijah, spotting her clipboard, slipped away to avoid eye contact. Miss Darnell noticed. "That young man, he's been here how long?" 3 months, Walter said. "He's 17, finishing school online. We're helping him apply for emancipation. He's not in any legal trouble?" "No," Walter replied. "Just needs a place that won't throw him out for being himself." Miss Darnell looked at him again, this time with something resembling curiosity. After another 30 minutes, she gathered her papers and nodded. "I'll submit my report by the end of the week," she said. As she turned to leave, Anna suddenly called out, "Wait!" Miss Darnell stopped. Anna held up a crayon drawing. It was the 3 of them, Celia, Walter, and her standing in front of Hope Haven. A sun beamed in the corner, and the words, "Thank you for seeing us," were written across the top. Miss Darnell stared at it for a long moment. Then, without a word, she took it, folded it gently, and tucked it into her folder. When she left, silence hung in the air for a beat. Then Celia exhaled. "That could have gone worse," Terrence said. "She's not easy to read," Walter murmured. "But I think she saw the truth." That night, Walter found Anna sitting by the window. "You were brave today," he said. She nodded. I just wanted her to see us, not just the building. Us. Walter sat beside her. You did that. Better than any words I could have said. Anna looked up at him. Do you think she'll let me stay with you forever? Walter took a long breath. I think she wants what's best for you. And I know we are that. I want your last name, she said quietly. For real. Walter's throat tightened. Then we'll make it real. Celia listened from the hallway, tears in her eyes. Hope was more than a word now. It was their future. Their name. Their fight. And it was just beginning. The air in Chicago carried a faint scent of thawing earth, a subtle signal that spring had arrived. Hope Haven bustled with renewed energy walls painted brighter, laughter echoing more freely, and a waiting list for those seeking shelter stretching longer by the day. But even with the progress, an undercurrent of anxiety lingered like a cold draft beneath the door. They were waiting again. Miss Darnell's final report hadn't yet arrived, and though the visit had gone better than expected, Walter couldn't shake the feeling that something else was coming. He kept himself occupied with the usual repairs, organizing meal rotations, helping Terrence draft a proposal for city funding, but every phone call or letter dropped into the mailbox made his heart skip a beat. Celia, too, had begun to fade more quickly. Her cough came more often now. Deeper, each spasm racking her small frame. She put on a strong face for Anna, but behind closed doors, when Anna was asleep or distracted, Walter caught her wincing more, her hands trembling when she reached for the tea kettle. She wasn't getting better. One evening, as Walter stood at the sink washing dishes, Celia leaned against the doorway, arms folded, her breath shallow but steady. I need to talk to you, she said. Walter dried his hands and nodded toward the table. Sit, I'll make tea. No, she said quietly. Not tea, not small talk. I need to say it now, before I can't. Walter's hands froze. He looked at her, really looked at her. Her eyes weren't panicked, but resolute. She sat at the table slowly, hands flat against the surface. I saw my doctor again last week, quietly. Jordan helped set it up. Walter sat across from her, dread settling in his chest. It's spreading, she said. The infection's in my lungs, aggressive. The meds are slowing it, but they won't stop it. Celia, I don't want sympathy, she said, holding up a hand. I want a plan. Walter swallowed hard. What kind of plan? She reached into a folder she'd brought with her and slid a document across the table. Walter looked down at it. A legal petition. Custody transfer. I want you to be Anna's father legally, before I'm gone. I don't want her lost in the system again. Walter stared at it. I thought we were going to wait until the city finalized things. We don't have time, she whispered. And they won't fight it if I initiate it. I've already signed. All we need is your signature. His hands trembled as he picked up the pen. Are you sure? I've never been more sure, she said. You saved her. You saved me. You gave us something I didn't think existed anymore. Walter hesitated for only a second. Then he signed. They sat in silence afterward, the paper lying between them like a quiet promise. The next morning, Walter walked the document to Jordan's office. Jordan scanned it, eyebrows raised. This changes everything, he said. It'll move the review forward, possibly even before the city closes their session for spring. Walter nodded. We need it to. As he left Jordan's office, his phone rang. Walter Hayes, said a familiar voice. Yes? This is Miss Darnell. Walter's pulse spiked. I wanted to speak to you personally. I've completed the final review. It will be formally filed by Friday, but I thought you deserved to know first. He held his breath. I'm recommending full placement approval, she said. Walter leaned against the nearest wall. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said. Thank the little girl who handed me a drawing and told me where her real home was. He didn't speak for a moment. One more thing, she added. A court hearing will still be required for full guardianship transfer. But with Miss Brooks' petition and your background, it should be routine. Walter exhaled slowly. We'll be ready. When he returned to Hope Haven, Celia was resting. Anna ran to him with a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Did she say yes? She said yes, Walter replied, kneeling. "We're going to court soon. Then you're stuck with me forever." Anna threw her arms around him. "Good. I already told everyone you're my real dad anyway." That night, they sat together as a family. Celia, though pale and tired, looked peaceful. Walter noticed how she leaned her head against the couch cushion, how her breathing slowed in rhythm with Anna's tiny snores from the other room. He tucked a blanket over her. "You did good," she whispered. "You did better," he replied. She smiled faintly, closing her eyes. The next morning, she was weaker, barely able to sit up. Walter called Jordan, who arranged for a nurse to visit quietly. They didn't want to alarm Anna. She just thought her mom was extra tired and promised to draw her something with extra sunshine. By dusk, Celia slipped into a soft sleep. Walter sat beside her long into the night, holding her hand, listening to the hum of the heater and the quiet ticking of the old clock on the shelf. The paper with both their signatures sat on the kitchen counter, ready. And outside, the wind carried the scent of rain, new life, and endings, and somewhere in between love, thick and real, holding fast against the dark. It was still dark when Walter awoke. The room was quiet, save for the gentle whir of the heater and the soft sound of Anna breathing in the next room. He rose, stretching stiff muscles, and walked toward the living room, where Celia had been resting the night before. He stopped short at the doorway. She was still there, but her chest was no longer rising. The blanket covered her neatly, her hands folded. A faint smile frozen on her lips. There was a stillness in the air that didn't feel like sleep, it felt final, like the closing of a book whose last page had been turned in silence. Walter stood frozen for a long moment. No panic, no outburst. Just a growing ache in his chest that tightened with each breath. Then he sat beside her and took her hand one last time. "Thank you," he whispered. It was almost an hour before Anna woke up. She padded out of her room, rubbing her eyes, dragging her blanket behind her. "Is Mom still sleeping?" she asked. Walter turned to her, his throat tight. "She's resting, baby, for good." Anna blinked. "You mean?" He nodded slowly. "She passed during the night. Peacefully. No pain." Anna didn't cry at first. She walked over and climbed onto the couch beside her mother, curling up beside her like she had done so many nights before. She lay there quietly, her tiny hand resting over Celia's, eyes wide and unblinking. Walter called Jordan, who handled everything with grace. Within an hour, a quiet team arrived to manage arrangements. There were no sirens, no flashing lights, just respectful movements and whispered condolences. Hope Haven was subdued that day. The news spread quickly through the halls, and guests offered soft words, small offerings. Carla brought a candle. Elijah left a drawing of an angel beside the door. Terrence, typically stone-faced, sat beside Walter during lunch and didn't speak a word, but the silence was full of understanding. That night, Anna sat at the table, drawing furiously. Walter cooked in silence, unsure of what words to say. After dinner, Anna approached with her drawing. It was a picture of the three of them, Celia, Walter, and Anna, but this time, Celia had wings. She stood just above them, smiling. Anna had written across the top in crooked letters, "Still my mom, just higher." "Oh." Walter knelt and hugged her, letting her sob into his chest. She cried for a long time. He held her tighter than he'd ever held anyone. In the days that followed, the shelter's rhythm returned slowly. Walter threw himself into work updating the pantry inventory, scheduling volunteer rotations, installing a new lock on the side gate. The movement helped, but grief didn't leave with labor. It lingered. Quiet. Heavy. The legal process accelerated. Celia's signed petition and the completed DCFS report paved the way. A judge granted Walter temporary guardianship pending final approval. The court date was set for early May. Anna had taken to sleeping in Walter's room more often now, curling up beside him on a cot he'd moved near his bed. Some nights she talked about Celia, her voice soft, memories fresh. Other nights, she asked about the future. "Do you think she can still see us?" she asked one night. "I do," Walter replied, "every day." "Huh. Do you think she's proud?" Walter swallowed. "I know she is." They held a small memorial at Hope Haven the following Sunday. It wasn't formal, just close friends, candles, soft music. Carla read a poem. Elijah sang a quiet hymn. Walter didn't speak until the very end. He stood beside a framed photo of Celia, one Anna had chosen, and said, "She came here with nothing but strength and a child to protect. And she gave all of us more than we could measure. She taught me what family means, what courage looks like, and she trusted me with the greatest gift, her daughter. I will honor that every day." Afterward, Anna helped scatter flower petals in the garden behind the building. They planted a sapling in her memory, a young maple tree, thin and trembling in the breeze. Anna named it Mama's Tree. Spring deepened. Walter began working on a small program inside Hope Haven, one Celia had dreamed about, a resource room for single mothers, filled with diapers, books, support materials, and a quiet corner where kids could play. They called it Celia's Corner. Volunteers showed up, donations came in. A retired teacher offered tutoring for residents' kids. A young social worker, inspired by Celia's story, offered pro bono assistance. The space filled with voices, new stories, new families. One night, as Walter closed the main gate, Anna stood beside him holding her sketchbook. "I added a page," she said. She opened to a new drawing, a tree with branches stretching high. On one side stood Celia, floating gently. On the other, Walter and Anna, holding hands, looking up. The sun behind them glowed in crayon yellow. "It's us," she said, still growing. Walter hugged her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "You're going to be all right," he said softly. "So are you," she replied. And as the stars emerged overhead, the wind swirled gently through Mama's tree, carrying with it the scent of fresh blossoms and the echo of a love that had never really left. The courthouse stood like a monument carved from stone and history, gray, rigid, and cold despite the warmth of spring outside. Walter held Anna's hand tightly as they walked through the metal detectors, her small fingers wrapped around two of his. She wore a yellow dress Celia had sewn for her the previous summer. Her hair was tied with a pale ribbon, and a stuffed bear, one Walter had salvaged and stitched together months earlier, peeked from her backpack. "Do you think the judge will be nice?" she asked, her voice low. Walter smiled faintly. "I think he'll see what matters." They waited in a bench-lined hallway outside the courtroom, sitting under buzzing fluorescent lights. Jordan arrived soon after, a leather folder under one arm and a reassuring calm in his presence. "We've got everything," Jordan said as he sat. "Petition's airtight. The judge is fair. No surprises." Walter nodded, though his stomach turned. He glanced at Anna, who leaned against him sleepily, her eyes heavy but alert. "Tell me again," she whispered. "What do I say?" "Just be honest," he said. "Tell the truth, like always." When their case was called, they entered the courtroom together. It was smaller than Walter expected, no grand gallery, no towering judge's bench, just rows of chairs, a polished floor, and a kind-eyed man in a black robe who motioned for them to sit. Judge Hammond was in his 60s, hair like soft ash, glasses low on his nose. He peered at the papers before him, then at Walter, then at Anna. "So," he said gently, "this is the family the paperwork tells me about." Walter nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge leaned back slightly. "Mr. Hayes, your history is not typical for a prospective guardian. Former corporate executive, financial scandal, homelessness. Yet the past year tells a different story." "Yes, sir. You've built a shelter, provided for dozens of families. You've maintained care for this child for several months. The Department of Children and Family Services filed a recommendation in your favor. So did the previous guardian, now deceased." Walter cleared his throat. "I did what I could, because she needed it. Because I needed it." Judge Hammond nodded slowly. "Miss Anna," he said, turning to the girl, "can you come speak with me?" Anna walked up to the bench nervously, her little shoes tapping on the floor. She looked up at the judge with a seriousness far beyond her years. "I just want to know," he said kindly, "how you feel about living with Mr. Hayes. Do you want him to be your guardian?" Anna nodded. "He already is." "Why do you say that?" "Because when I was scared, he was there. When my mom got sick, he didn't run away. He stayed. He makes me laugh when I'm sad. He makes good spaghetti. And he talks to Mama's tree. The courtroom was quiet. Judge Hammond smiled softly. Mama's tree? Anna pointed to the drawing she had brought, folded neatly in her hands. We planted it for my mom. It's growing strong now. Just like us. The judge took the paper, unfolded it, and stared at the crayon sun, the tall tree, the two figures at the base, one tall, one small. He looked back at Walter. Mr. Hayes, are you ready to take full responsibility for this child? Emotionally, legally, financially? I am, Your Honor, Walter said without hesitation. Every day, for the rest of my life. There was a long pause. Judge Hammond nodded once. Then it is the judgment of this court that full legal guardianship of Anna Brooks be transferred to Walter J. Hayes, effective immediately. Jordan let out a slow breath beside him. Anna squealed and jumped into Walter's arms, clutching his neck. He hugged her tightly, eyes wet but smiling. Congratulations, Judge Hammond said. You're a father now, Mr. Hayes. Walter whispered, I always was. Outside the courthouse, Anna insisted they go celebrate. Can we get ice cream? She asked. Mom always said ice cream was for the best days. Walter looked at Jordan, who laughed. You've got my vote. They found a small corner shop nearby, red stools, hand-dipped cones, and 1,960-second jukebox music playing from an old speaker. Anna picked strawberry with rainbow sprinkles. Walter chose chocolate. Jordan, ever the minimalist, got black coffee and a small vanilla. As they sat at the window, Anna turned to Walter. Do I call you Dad now? Walter paused. If you want. She leaned into him, licking her cone. I think I do. He kissed the top of her head. Then that's what I'll be. On the walk back, Anna skipped ahead, twirling in her yellow dress beneath the budding trees. Walter watched her and felt something he hadn't felt in years, a kind of completeness that wasn't loud or dazzling, but deep, anchoring. That evening, back at Hope Haven, Carla and Terrence had prepared a small dinner in their honor: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and apple pie from the corner bakery. Other residents joined in, clapping as Walter and Anna walked in. Someone had hung a handmade banner. Welcome home, Anna Hayes. She beamed. That night, as Walter tucked her in, Anna pulled the blanket up to her chin and said, Do you think Mom knows? Walter nodded. She knows. And she's happy? He brushed a curl from her forehead. Happier than ever. She yawned. Tomorrow, we can plant another tree. Why's that? Because families grow. Walter turned off the light, sat by the window, and watched the city twinkle outside, alive, loud, and indifferent. But inside this small room in a once crumbling shelter, something sacred had taken root. He wasn't just fixing broken things anymore. He was building something that could last. The weeks after the court hearing passed quickly. Anna settled into her new life as Anna Hayes with a joy that was as quiet as it was complete. She insisted on writing her name on everything: her notebooks, her drawings, even the side of her favorite cereal box. Walter never corrected her. Every stroke of that last name was a promise fulfilled. At Hope Haven, life found its rhythm again. The shelter's new wing, Celia's Corner, continued to grow. Donations increased after a local news article profiled the shelter's work and the story of Walter and Anna. People from across the city began to send supplies, handwritten letters, and even offers of volunteer support. One day, a retired nurse dropped off 3 boxes of children's books. For the girl who believes in trees, she said, smiling at Anna. But with progress came pressure. Walter began receiving unexpected phone calls, first from a former colleague, then from an unfamiliar number with a New York area code. Some were vague, others not so much. One message was left anonymously. You've made yourself visible again, Hayes. And not everyone forgets so easily. Walter played the voicemail 3 times, standing in the dark kitchen, phone pressed to his ear. His past, buried under layers of work and redemption, was stirring. Later that week, as Walter was sorting through paperwork in his small office at the back of the shelter, Terrence knocked on the door. A grave look on his face. There's someone here asking for you, he said. Says his name is Charles Kettering. Walter's stomach dropped. Charles Kettering. That name hadn't crossed his lips in years. Former partner, former friend. The man who'd testified to save his own skin when the scandal broke, leaving Walter to take the fall. Send him in, Walter said. his voice calm despite the thunder in his chest. Charles walked in wearing an expensive coat and the same arrogant smirk Walter remembered from their Wall Street days. He looked around the room with faint amusement. "Well," Charles said, "it's true then. You really are living in a homeless shelter." Walter stood, arms folded. "What do you want?" "Relax, Walter," Charles said, sitting down without being asked. "This isn't a shakedown. I'm here because you've stirred up some attention. Your face was in the paper last week, new name, new life, all noble and shiny. But the board back in New York? They remember. Some of them aren't too pleased." I served my time," Walter said sharply. "I paid my dues. Doesn't matter to them. You disappeared. You were supposed to stay disappeared." Walter's fists clenched. "I built something here. I'm helping people." Charles leaned forward. "Which is why I'm here, to help you keep it." Walter narrowed his eyes. "Why would you help me?" "Because I'm tired of covering for everyone else's sins," Charles said, the smirk fading. "You were the scapegoat. I knew it then. I know it now. And if they come after you again, drag this place down with you, it's on my conscience." Walter studied him in silence. He didn't trust him. Not fully. But there was something in Charles's eyes he hadn't seen before. Guilt. Maybe. Or regret. Trying on new clothes. "What do you want me to do?" Walter asked. "There's a file," Charles said. "Back from the audit. It proves your innocence buried in archives. I found it. I want to bring it forward." Why now?" "Because if I don't," Charles said, "someone else might rewrite the story. And this time, you might lose more than your job." Walter didn't answer. He nodded once. Charles stood to leave, then paused at the door. "That girl," he said. "She yours?" "She is now." Charles gave a faint nod. "She's lucky." After he left, Walter sat in silence for a long time, staring at the folder Charles had handed him. Inside were copies of emails, financial records, timestamps, evidence that could clear his name completely, but also evidence that would stir old waters. He didn't want a headline. He didn't want to be the center of anything. He just wanted peace for Anna and for the shelter. That night, as Walter tucked Anna in, she reached up and touched his cheek. "Are you okay?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, kiddo. Just a lot on my mind." "You don't have to worry," she said. "You always fix things." "No." He kissed her forehead. "Trying my best." After she slept, Walter stepped outside. The night was cool, the air fragrant with blooming trees. He walked quietly to the garden where Mama's tree stood, branches taller now, swaying gently under the stars. He knelt beside it and whispered, "I don't want to stir the past, but if it threatens her, if it threatens this place, I'll fight." He looked up at the tree's leaves trembling in the wind. "I hope you understand, Celia, because this time, I won't walk away." And just like that, he made his decision. If the truth could protect what they'd built, what she'd sacrificed for, then he would bring it into the light, even if it meant facing the ghosts he'd run from all those years ago. Walter stood in front of the mirror the next morning, buttoning a shirt he hadn't worn in months. It was the closest thing he had to a suit now clean, pressed, but far from his Wall Street days. He stared at his reflection. Same face. New man. He didn't flinch when he looked himself in the eyes this time. Anna watched him from the doorway, holding her cereal bowl. "Where are you going all dressed up?" "I have to talk to someone," he said, straightening his collar. "Someone important." "About what?" Walter thought for a moment. "About telling the truth." She nodded slowly. "Like in court?" "Exactly like that." Anna smiled. "Then you'll be great." He kissed the top of her head and grabbed the folder Charles had left. The weight of it was more than paper. It was the past, bound in a manila shell, finally ready to be opened. Walter met Jordan at a diner near the city clerk's office. The place smelled like burnt toast and over-perfumed coffee. Jordan slid into the booth across from him and eyed the folder. "So," he said, "you're really doing this?" Walter nodded. "If it stays buried, they'll think they still have power over me. Over this place. Over Anna." Jordan exhaled. All right, let's go over it. They opened the folder, document by document proof that the transactions Walter had been blamed for were orchestrated by a small group of executives, Charles not least among them. Walter's name had been used as cover. All the timestamps, digital trails, and approval records pointed elsewhere. Charles could have saved you back then, Jordan said. But he didn't. I know. And now he wants to be the hero? Walter shook his head. I don't need him to be the hero. I just need the truth to stand up. Jordan closed the folder. Then let's give it a platform. They spent the afternoon filing a formal motion to reopen Walter's case. Jordan submitted affidavits, attached the newly uncovered documents, and requested a public hearing with the city ethics board. It would be a risk, press attention, headlines, questions Walter wasn't sure he wanted to answer. But if he stayed quiet, the shadow of guilt would always linger over him, over Anna, over everything they built. That evening, Walter returned to Hope Haven to find Anna waiting with 2 bowls of soup. I made yours hotter, she said proudly. You look tired, he laughed. That obvious? You've got thinking lines on your forehead. He sat beside her and took the bowl. Thanks, Nurse Hayes. She grinned. Dr. Hayes, actually. They ate in silence for a moment. Did you tell the truth? She asked. I did. Was it hard? Harder than almost anything I've done. She sipped her soup. But you did it anyway? He nodded. Because people like us, we don't get to run from the past. We either face it, or we let it win. Later that night, Walter sat at the shelter's front desk alone, sifting through a stack of emails. One caught his eye. Subject line, Press Inquiry, Walter Hayes. He opened it cautiously. A reporter from a major outlet wanted to schedule an interview about the upcoming ethics hearing and Walter's role in the scandal years ago. The message was polite, professional, and clear. People are watching your story again, and they want to hear it from you. Walter didn't respond right away. He stared out the window at the streetlights casting long shadows across the sidewalk. He thought about the first night Anna found him there, half frozen and broken, about Celia's quiet strength, about the promises he made. He hit reply. I'll talk, he wrote. But only if we start with the shelter. With the people who saved me. He hit send before he could change his mind. The next few days moved quickly. Walter prepared his statement. Jordan helped organize the supporting documents. And Anna, sensing the weight of it all, did what she always did, drew pictures. She handed Walter one the night before the hearing. Him standing on a stage, a light shining down, and a crowd watching. It's your turn now, she said, to speak big. Walter felt the lump rise in his throat. You sure are bossy, she shrugged. That's what daughters do. The morning of the hearing, Walter dressed simply again, no tie, just a clean button-down and steady hands. As he walked into the City Hall building, flanked by Jordan and a growing sense of resolve, he could feel the pressure in the air. Reporters hovered outside, cameras pointed his way, but he didn't flinch. He stepped into the chamber, approached the microphone, and began, My name is Walter Hayes. Years ago, I was part of a firm that chose profit over people, silence over truth. I took the fall for something I didn't do, not because I was guilty, but because I believed it was the only way to protect what little I had left. I was wrong, not just about the facts, but about believing I didn't deserve to fight for myself. Today, I come not just to clear my name, but to speak for those who don't get this chance. I run a shelter now. I'm raising a daughter, and every day I ask myself, what kind of world am I building for her? He paused, and today, that world starts with telling the truth. As he stepped back from the microphone, the room remained quiet. No applause, no outbursts. Just a solemn, respectful silence. But outside, as he and Jordan walked down the steps, a reporter called out, Mr. Hayes, do you think this will change anything? Walter turned, glanced toward the sky, then looked straight ahead. I don't know, he said. But for the first time, I'm not afraid to find out. 3 days after Walter's hearing, the city buzzed with reaction. Articles appeared across major news outlets. Ex-Wall Street exec rewrites his legacy. Walter Hayes, From Scandal to Shelter, Redemption in Real Time, Interviews, Op-eds, Debates. The narrative was shifting. Where once there had been scandal and whispers, now there was empathy, admiration, even inspiration. Hope Haven was flooded with attention. Donors called nonstop. Volunteers doubled. The pantry overflowed. A nonprofit offered to fund an expansion. A documentary producer requested permission to film a segment. Carla joked they'd need crowd control soon. Anna, however, was unimpressed. She'd seen Walter wipe down toilets, change diapers for babies whose mothers were too exhausted to move, and sit up all night with a man withdrawing from heroin. No article could capture the man she knew. Still, she was proud enough to draw a hero dad badge and tape it to his office door. Walter, for his part, remained grounded. Fame had never served him well. He spent the mornings sorting supplies, and the evenings sitting with residents, just as he always had. Yet inside, something felt different. Lighter. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from anything. One quiet afternoon, as he walked past Mama's tree in the back garden, he spotted a woman waiting beneath it. She wore a trench coat, her silver hair tied back, and a cane resting beside her. "Miss Langston?" he said, surprised. She turned with a smile. "Walter Hayes. Still planting seeds." "I see." Judith Langston had been one of the prosecutors in his original case, a sharp woman known for her ruthlessness. She'd retired years ago, but her presence still carried gravity. "I wasn't expecting you," Walter said, approaching cautiously. "I know. I read the papers, watched the hearing. Thought I should say something in person." He braced himself. "You were right," she said plainly, "about everything." Walter blinked. "He never blamed you." "You should have," she said. "We were under pressure. You were convenient, and I didn't look deep enough." Walter was quiet. The breeze rustled the maple leaves overhead. "I saw the girl," Judith added. "She looks like joy wrapped in skin." "She saved me," Walter replied. Judith nodded. "I'm sorry it took me this long to see the truth. But I want to help." Walter studied hair. "How?" "I've still got connections. A few friends on the Board of Education, social services, even a news network. If you're building something real here, you'll need protection, resources, visibility." Walter hesitated, then extended a hand. "Welcome aboard." As she walked away slowly, Walter realized something. Forgiveness could travel in both directions. Later that night, Hope Haven hosted its first community open house. Tables were decorated with handmade crafts. Kids handed out flyers. Elijah played piano in the corner. A local bakery donated cupcakes. Anna wore her yellow dress again, now a little shorter on her growing frame, and stood near the door like a tiny hostess. Jordan gave a short speech. Carla told a story about a resident who'd just secured housing. Then someone handed the mic to Walter. He stepped forward, uncertain, then glanced at Anna, who gave him a double thumbs up. "I don't like talking about the past," he began. "But tonight isn't just about what we've survived. It's about what we've created together. A place where names don't matter as much as actions. Where people show up, help each other, and stay. Hope Haven is more than a shelter. It's a second chance." The crowd applauded, not with frenzy but with warmth, a quiet standing ovation. After the guests left and the halls fell still, Anna found Walter in the garden, staring up at the stars. "I have something for you," she said, handing him a piece of paper. He unfolded it, a drawing of Hope Haven with the words, "Our Real Home," written above in big purple letters. Inside were stick figures: Anna, Walter, Carla, Elijah, Terrence, and even Mama's tree, smiling. Walter smiled, tears pricking his eyes. "You're quite the artist." Anna climbed onto the bench beside him. "Do you think Celia sees all this?" Walter looked up at the moon, glowing softly above the rooftops. "I know she does." Ugh. They sat in silence, the garden alive with crickets and the scent of night flowers. Suddenly Anna asked, "What happens now?" Walter thought for a moment. "Now we keep building, keep helping, and maybe we take this even further." She tilted her head. "Like another Hope Haven?" "Maybe," he said. "One day." Anna grinned. Can we call it Hope Mountain? He laughed. We'll work on the name. She leaned against him, her small frame warm against his side. I think we're gonna be okay. Huh. Walter wrapped his arm around her. Me too, sweetheart, me too. And somewhere in the quiet, amid the heartbeat of a rebuilt life and the soft promise of tomorrow, Walter knew the ripple had begun. And it would keep moving outward, reaching places he hadn't dared to dream of before. Spring had folded gently into early summer. Hope Haven buzzed with new life, families finding permanent housing, new volunteers painting murals in the hallways, and the launch of a pilot program for job training. Walter had never been busier, but it was the kind of busy that felt alive, purposeful. Anna, now reading chapter books, took to helping younger kids with their ABCs after school. She wore a little badge that said, Helper in Chief, which she made herself with glitter glue. She had flour in her hair more often than not, as she and Carla baked banana bread for the community once a week. The shelter felt like more than a place to stay. It felt like it breathed. Then, one Tuesday morning, a letter arrived. It was delivered by courier, sealed in an envelope with no return address. Walter opened it slowly in his office. The words were typed, cold and precise. Mr. Hayes, the past does not vanish because the public turns its gaze elsewhere. Some of us remember. Some of us keep records. We advise you to stop pursuing expansion, or the truth you've built will be questioned all over again. There was no name, no signature. Just an address scribbled at the bottom, a warehouse near the docks. Walter stared at it. Heart pounding. He called Jordan immediately. That's a threat, Jordan said, after reading the scanned copy. You need to report this. Walter exhaled, rubbing his temples. It's not just a threat. It's a warning. They know we're growing. They're scared of it. You think it's someone from the firm? I think it's someone who's benefited from my silence. Jordan nodded slowly. You're going to the address, aren't you? I have to. Against Jordan's advice, Walter drove to the warehouse that evening. The place was old, rusting, with windows like clouded eyes. He stepped inside, phone in hand, recorder running. He didn't know what he expected, maybe an ambush, maybe a confrontation, but it was empty. Dust on the floor, footsteps long faded. But in the center of the warehouse, he found a metal box. Inside it were records, old financial ledgers, contracts, and scanned images of forged signatures, all implicating the same inner circle that had let him take the fall. But something else was in the box. Photos of Walter, of Anna, of Hope Haven. Someone had been watching them. Walter felt sick. That night, back at the shelter, he barely slept. He sat in the living room long after Anna went to bed, staring at the flickering lamp. Carla found him there at 2 a.m., still in his coat. You're shaking, she said, handing him tea. What happened? He told her. Everything. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she put a hand on his. So you bring it into the light, she said simply. You've already survived worse. I don't want this to touch her, Walter whispered. Not Anna. Then you fight louder, with everything you've got. The next morning, Walter called Judith Langston. I found something, he said. Something big. She arrived within the hour, her cane tapping softly down the hallway. Walter handed her the documents, his hands trembling. They've been watching us. Judith read through them silently, then looked up. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about blackmail, corruption. A system designed to bury people who speak. Can we expose it? Judith nodded grimly. We'll need to go federal, and you'll need protection. Walter thought of Anna. Of the children laughing in the hallway. Of the mothers who trusted him. Then we do it. All the way. By the end of the week, Judith had contacted her former colleagues at the Department of Justice. A task force was formed. Walter gave his statement under oath, on record, with a new fire in his voice. News broke fast, bigger than before, not just about one man, but about a system. Headlines screamed. Corporate web unraveled. Whistleblower reopens cold case. Hope Haven founder targeted in corporate cover, up. Hope Haven became a symbol, a lighthouse in the storm. Anna noticed the tension, of course. She watched Walter more closely, hugged him tighter before school, and stayed close at dinner. One night, she crawled into his lap as he sat on the porch. "Are we in danger?" she asked quietly. Walter wrapped his arms around her. "We're not alone. And we're not backing down." She nodded. "Good, 'cause I'm not scared." He smiled, though the knot in his stomach tightened. As the investigation deepened, names began to fall. Executives, lawyers, even a politician who had shielded the corruption. Some were arrested. Others resigned. Charles Kettering, who had once betrayed Walter, was offered immunity in exchange for full cooperation. He testified, clearly and without excuse. Walter sat in the back of the courtroom, silent. After the hearing, Charles approached him. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. Walter looked at him. "Then we understand each other." But when Charles turned to leave, Walter added, "Thank you for telling the truth." Charles stopped, nodded once, then disappeared into the hallway. By the end of the month, Hope Haven had more support than ever. But security was tightened. Guards were posted discreetly. Cameras were installed. Walter received letters of solidarity from other shelters, churches, even senators. And yet, even with the storm raging in headlines and courtrooms, Anna's life continued: school, friends, bedtime stories. One evening, as she painted a sign for the garden, she looked up and asked, "When will things go back to normal?" Walter paused. "Maybe they won't." She tilted her head. "Is that bad?" "No," he said slowly. "Sometimes the world changes, and sometimes we change it." She smiled. "Then let's keep changing it." And in the golden light of sunset, with paint on her fingers and hope in her voice, Walter knew she wasn't just the reason he fought, she was the future he was fighting for. Summer turned to autumn. The leaves around Hope Haven glowed in shades of amber and fire, carpeting the streets like a warm farewell to the hardest year of Walter's life. But it wasn't just a season changing, it was everything. The federal investigation concluded with a sweeping crackdown. Over a dozen key figures were indicted, and several faced prison. Walter was officially exonerated. His name, once whispered with suspicion, now stood as a symbol of resilience and justice. He'd appeared on national television, not for scandal but for the story of a man who fell, rose, and chose to lift others with him. But Walter didn't care about airtime. He cared about mornings like this one, when Anna ran through the shelter in her worn sneakers, holding a backpack twice her size and yelling, "We're gonna be late." He cared about the new wing of Hope Haven, now under construction thanks to a generous grant from a civil rights foundation. And he cared about the way people looked at him now, with trust, with respect, not pity. That morning, as Walter walked Anna to school, they passed Mama's tree. Its branches stretched higher now, solid and proud, with a new plaque at the base. In memory of Celia Morgan, she believed in second chances. Anna ran her fingers over the engraved letters. She would have liked it, right? Walter nodded. She'd have loved it. They reached the school steps. Anna turned, her face serious. "Hey, after school, can we talk about something?" "Of course," Walter said, concerned. "Everything okay?" She nodded. "Just something big. For later." "Will." He watched her disappear into the school building, her backpack bouncing with each step. She was growing taller, faster, braver than he ever imagined. It scared him sometimes how much she meant to him, how fiercely he wanted her to have a world she didn't have to survive, but one she could thrive in. Back at the shelter, things moved fast. Carla was reviewing architectural plans with a construction crew. Terrence coordinated a weekend meal drive. Jordan had a meeting scheduled with a national nonprofit to replicate Hope Haven's model in other cities. Walter stepped back from it all for a moment and walked into his office, closing the door quietly. He opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the folder, the one Charles had given him, the documents that started the storm. He didn't look at them anymore, but he couldn't quite throw them away. Instead, he took them, walked to the garden, and placed them beneath the roots of Mama's tree. He dug gently with his hands and buried the past where it belonged. That evening, Anna returned from school with her usual chatter about spelling tests and lunchroom drama. But after dinner, she sat across from Walter at the kitchen table, uncharacteristically quiet. "You said I could tell you something big," she said. He folded his hands. "Always." She took a breath. "There's this essay contest at school. The topic is, who inspires you?" He smiled. "Let me guess, Michelle Obama?" "Nope," she said, smirking. "You." Walter blinked. "I wrote about you," she continued. "About how you used to sleep on the sidewalk. But now you make a home for people. About how you don't yell when things are hard. You just keep going. And how when people say mean things, you prove them wrong with kindness." Walter felt his throat tighten. "Anna, I want to read it at the assembly," she said. "But I'm nervous, so I was wondering if you'd stand next to me while I do." He stood, walked around the table, and knelt beside her. "You don't need me to be brave, kiddo, but I'll be there. Always." The day of the school assembly came. The auditorium was full parents, students, teachers. Anna stood at the microphone, hands shaking slightly, but her voice steady. "My name is Anna Hayes, and I want to tell you about my hero. G." She spoke of the cold winter morning when she met Walter, of the way he cried in the snow, of the way she offered him her last piece of bread. She told the room how he'd become her dad not by blood, but by heart. She spoke of justice, of second chances, and of the power of kindness when the world is unkind. And when she finished, the room erupted into applause. Walter stood nearby, eyes wet, heart full. Afterward, people approached him, teachers, parents, even the school principal. "You're doing something rare," one said. "You're changing the world. One little girl at a time." As the sun set that evening, Anna and Walter sat once again by Mama's tree. She leaned against him, humming a tune from music class. "Think we'll ever move?" she asked. "Maybe," Walter said. "But only if we find another place that feels like home." She smiled. "I like it here, even if the roof leaks sometimes." He laughed. "We'll fix that." In the silence that followed, they both looked at the city skyline in the distance. Lights flickered on, one by one, like stars descending to Earth. It wasn't a perfect world. It never would be. But in this little corner of it, something good had been planted. Something strong, and as night embraced the sky, Walter whispered a quiet promise not to the courts, not to the cameras, but to Anna, to Celia, to every broken soul who ever wandered in from the cold. "This light, we'll keep it burning, no matter what." The story of Walter and Anna teaches us that redemption is always possible, no matter how broken the past may seem. It reminds us that acts of kindness, no matter how small, can change the course of a life. Through courage, truth, and love, even the most shattered souls can build something lasting and beautiful. Ultimately, it is not power or wealth that defines us, but the light we choose to carry for others in their darkest moments.